tears ACL. We don't know when he's coming back. He could miss the whole season. We just need to acknowledge it. Is there any Kawhi Leonard leaving the Clippers possibility? What do we know? Because I don't care if he's injured. Teams will line up to get. We saw with Kevin Durant. If you're a top 5-6 player, teams are going to line up to get you, even if you're going to be out for the season. Maybe. What do we know about Kawhi?
I've gotten no indication that Kawhi Leonard is interested in doing anything but re-signing with the Clippers, rehabbing that injury. And you talk to other teams and agents who might be talking with the Clippers. The way they're proceeding certainly seems to be with Kawhi Leonard in mind. And listen, you don't know until a player signs that contract, but you just said it's an ACL. And there's an expectation that he could miss next season. You tear your ACL in the playoffs, especially in a season where we're pushed up against next season a month later, like they can't assume he will be on the court next year. So they've got to proceed accordingly here in free agency and at the draft with their own players. But I don't have any sense that he plans to do anything but to continue forward with Paul George and that group.
So if it's status quo in LA with Kawhi, and the current intel best we have is it's going to be status quo with Damian Lillard in Portland for a while. I don't think that deal, as of now, that doesn't appear to be something that's happening this offseason. That leaves us with the other big name that we've got to mention that will absolutely be in play this offseason, is already in play right now, and that's Ben Simmons in Philadelphia, which is the other obvious Beal team that I mentioned. This is a very complicated situation. His value, I think, is at an all-time low after just a really bad series against Atlanta where it looked like the free throws and everything was in his head. He passed up that dunk in Game 7 that was just, frankly, jarring to see. What's the latest we have on Ben Simmons?
The Sixers are engaged out there in trade talks, and they're taking on offers, they're making offers around the league. They're trying to get a sense, listen, who's the best possible player they can get back, because they're doing a trade to want to continue to be a championship contender. Like, they don't have to they can't be in of a mindset, and I don't believe they are, of we just have to move him. He's got 4 years left on his contract, and they can't overreact to that Atlanta series.
4 ironclad years, no options, no nothing. 4 ironclad years.
Which means he really has no leverage in where he could go. If you trade for Ben Simmons, you've got him under contract. He's going to come and play, and that opens up the landscape of teams. But I think it will be serious this week. And they're certainly, if there's a deal out there, they're going to do it. But they also know they get one crack at this, and making the wrong deal, it takes them out of championship contention with Joel Embiid in his prime. They've got to be really careful. But Daryl Morey, like, it is hard for him to, when there's a deal to be had in the air, no one loves making big deals more than him.
Well, they went after Harden and didn't get Harden, and everyone thought, well, if they don't get Harden, Beal's the next logical target. But I think a name that's really interesting as an inflection point is C.J. McCollum in Portland. A Simmons for McCollum swap, who has to throw in draft equity, they'll argue about that. But that has made theoretical sense. Theoretical, I say, because McCollum comes to Philly, and he's the guard that they don't have. The shooting, playmaking threat fits well with Joel Embiid. But then if you're Philly, you start to say, well, boy, that puts a lot of pressure on Joel Embiid to carry the defense almost by himself. And we saw what happened to Rudy Gobert in the playoffs when Utah built that kind of roster with them. And as you said, they don't want just anybody for Ben Simmons. They want an all-star player for Ben Simmons. And CJ is a very good player. He's already been an all-star team. When they look at Portland, they see the other guy.
They want the other guy.
They see the other guy.
Who's not available.
And say, we want that guy, which to me makes it for a very interesting situation. If the Sixers can get a guard some other way, just in theory, if they can sign and trade for Kyle Lowry, then they can look at their team and say, okay, we've papered over one need. What if we keep Simmons, see how he functions in this ecosystem where we have a legit lead guard, ups his trade value, see what happens in Portland, see what other situation goes haywire around the league, because something always goes haywire somewhere, and see what Ben Simmons' trade value looks like in January, February. I think that frankly makes a lot of sense.
Zach, I think more than anything, the fact that Simmons has 4 years left on his contract means that the Sixers don't just have to.
Names on the trade block and in free agency, starting with All-NBA, All-Star Bradley Beal in Washington, and some other big names too. Come back with us on the Woj.
We give them 5. Trade him, get rid of him. He's so petrified of shooting. Everybody and their grandmother's been telling you to shoot the basketball.
A lot of things are being said. It hasn't come from me. I haven't made any firm decision on what my future will be.
Are you frustrated?
Is the sky blue?
Welcome back to the WOJ and Low Special, presented by Kia.
Welcome back to the Woj Low offseason extravaganza. We hit the draft now. Woj, let's go to the biggest veterans that could be moving, maybe moving. Who knows if they're moving? And it has to start in Washington with Bradley Beal, who's entering the last year of his contract, coming off a sensational All-NBA 30-plus points per game season. Where do we stand? Again, we're 4 days before the draft. Like, if they're going to make, anything's going to happen, there's got to be a little clarity soon. Where do we stand with this?
Bradley Beal has not told the Washington Wizards that he would like a trade. He has not told them anything, but he is invested in helping them in free agency. And, he's obviously gotten a chance to talk to Wes Unseld Jr., their new coach. Now, there's still time for that to happen, but the mechanism to do a Bradley Beal trade or any trade of a player of that caliber is to do it before the draft, because you want to do it around draft picks. Once the draft passes, it's a lot harder to do that deal, because hypothetically, if you're going to do it with Golden State, you're going to tell the Warriors who the players are. You would like it 7 and 14 if those players are in it. And so, listen, Bradley Beal has known the timetable of this, that if he wanted it to be moved, if he wasn't going to sign the extension and decided he was ready to move on, that it really needs to get done before draft night. That doesn't mean he can't still do it, but right now the Wizards are preparing for draft night, and they're preparing for free agency, and certainly Bradley Beal and Russell Westbrook are part of their plans for next season.
You mentioned Golden State. Bradley Beal is in his prime, still way younger than people realize because he came into the league so young. Sensational player, great shooter. It's not just going to be Golden State if it ever happens. I think there will be so many teams that try to get into this. I think Boston makes sense. Miami makes sense. Golden State, Philadelphia. We can go on and on. We can start with the Warriors because you mentioned in the prior segment. To me, if I'm Washington, unless I love James Wiseman, unless I love him, and that's a game changer if I love him. Wiseman, 7, good pick. Not a great pick. 14, not an incredible offer to me if I'm the Wizards. You got to give me 2026 unprotected and a swap. And the Warriors, then you could flip, like, what are the other teams going to offer, right? Like Tyler Hero's value from Miami, I think, is a little lower. They're encumbered with first-round picks. Is Boston going to offer Jaylen Brown? I don't think so. To me, there's not much point in giving up one star for another if you're Boston. So you start to suss out what is the marketplace going to look like. Golden State can reasonably look at it and say, hey, even if you don't love our offer, go get something better.
That's exactly right. And with 1 year left on his deal, Beal has leverage because the team trading for him wants to know that he wants to be there and plans to re-sign. But I also think because of the kind of player and person Bradley Beal is, I think there are teams who might not be in glamour markets who would look and say, if we win, that we could sell Bradley Beal on winning and stay in a situation where we could be really good. That isn't an LA or a New York or a Chicago, Boston, Miami. So I do think the teams out there, there'd be a wide pool. Everybody in the league would love to have Bradley Beal. Listen, he's been very loyal to Washington, and he is.
And it's legit. It's not fake.
He loves it
and wants to win.
Listen, there are some players who look for reasons to leave and some players who look for reasons to stay. He has always been about finding reasons to want to stay there. And certainly they can sign him to the Supermax next season. There's a giant extension awaiting him if he wants to do it. I think he has legitimately been torn, and he's always been looking for reasons to stay there. He loves that organization. He loves that city. But he wants to win, and he's got to look at the landscape with that roster, that team, and how they can improve themselves to weigh both of those things against each other.
And there's another obvious Beal team we didn't mention. We're going to get to them in a second with separate names. But let's stop for a second. We do need to acknowledge Kawhi Leonard can hit free agency in this offseason. He did just tear his ACL. We don't know when he's coming back. He could miss the whole season. We just need to acknowledge it. Is there any Kawhi Leonard leaving the Clippers possibility? What do we know? Because I don't care if he's injured. Teams will line up to get. We saw with Kevin Durant. If you're a top 5-6 player, teams are going to line up to get you, even if you're going to be out for the season, maybe. What do we know about Kawhi?
I've gotten no indication that Kawhi Leonard is interested in doing anything but re-signing with the Clippers, rehabbing that injury. and you talk to other teams and agents who might be talking with the Clippers, the way they're proceeding certainly seems to be with Kawhi Leonard in mind. And listen, you don't know until a player signs that contract, but you just said it.
I'm Zach Lowe. This is ESPN Insider Adrian Wojnarowski. Woj, the Milwaukee Bucks are NBA champions. Congratulations to them. But the offseason starts now. The madness of the draft and free agency is upon us. The draft is in 4 days. Let's get right to it. Sitting at the top are the Detroit Pistons after years in the wilderness, a chance to remake their franchise. Cade Cunningham has been the name all along. Where are we with Detroit as we approach the draft?
Zach, first of all, happy draft week. I think Detroit is getting there on Cade Cunningham as their choice, but they haven't formally made that decision yet. They had Jalen Suggs in for a workout, Jalen Green. They would like to still see Evan Mobley, but they decided at the very beginning of this, we're going to do a process. We're going to make sure we feel Cade Cunningham is the player. I think they will get there this week. Not quite there yet.
Based on what I've heard the same about having a process. I'm still going to be absolutely blown away if we get to the draft and it's anything but
agreed.
Cade Cunningham at number 1 to Detroit with all the guys they picked last year, Sadiq Bey, Isaiah Stewart, Killian Hayes. Like, that's something interesting going on there. Then we get to where the drama really could start, which is Houston at 2. They also have 23 and 24, a lot of ammo, a lot of future picks. Cleveland at 3.